My name is David Rodriguez. I'm the director for strategy and business operations at Kiwibot. I was the first non-technical employee in the company at this point, raising to the point where I'm nearly co-founder. So I enjoyed the privileges of being essentially the growth hacker that has raised Kiwibot from incubator to this point where we are nagging our Series A. For general context, I'll be super happy to show you an article in TechCrunch um,
Yes, yesterday.
that 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 launched yesterday. This also had like some replicas in Forbes. So in general, we're going on a very good moment. I will be happy to tell you the story and explain the business model in a second, but just so that you have that on the back burner. So, as a quick introduction of who I am the person that is not only in charge of the entire business cycle, I'm in charge of government relationships. I have created the modes for launch, for expansion. I work very closely with several data teams who report to me on the structure that we have created. Actually, AI reports to operation. So we are like getting deployments and developments that are only customer oriented. We're not doing a lot of art for artists, and that really makes a difference for us. So
David, if you don't mind, one of the things we've seen in Silicon Valley here is we have a lot of AV companies who are testing out different kind of vehicles like Neuro or Waymo, self-driving cars, and it's all pilots. So for us, we see a lot of it. And just so you know, this is a gathering of a lot of my student alumni and a very global mix of students, more so than what you saw at Stanford class recently. And a lot of the Stanford students from past and present are also here. So they've taken AV class, my business of AV data course here online. And we also have David Kerrigan, who is an author in the AV space, who's joining us from Ireland. So this is an informed crowd about AV in general. But what I find fascinating about KiwiBot is you're not just another AV pilot. You're a solid business, generating revenues and scaling up, and you have your own methodology. So, and if you can give us a context of how long you've been here, where your headquarters are, how big is the team, and how many of these customers, or what's your mode of operation, the operation side especially, that would help us get a sense of the business.
yeah, for sure. So in this moment, the company is this is a Silicon Valley company. As you will see tomorrow, we're based in San Jose, although we have operations in several other places. This team has around 10 people full time in the US and around 40 people in Colombia, because we're a Colombian company. Uh, Something we haven't even worked with other Stanford professors is the whole idea behind labor arbitrage. Fundamentally, we take a lot of pride in having, first of all, supervised teleoperated robots. We were one of the first advocates in this technology. Us creating the type of tech stack that cities will approve quickly um, to get um, to get going on the street has proven very useful for cities and departments of transportation to prepare ahead of the upcoming Waymos and Neuros and essentially street cars on the right of way. Having sidewalk delivery robots that are teleoperated as a first step has been super useful um, when it comes to create policy that will inform cities on the challenges that might come up with this technology. On a technical note, at this moment, we have achieved outdoors level 3 autonomy, but many times we have cities like Santa Monica where even if the technological capacity is there, we cannot deploy autonomous technology just because regulations do that. So I think it has a lot of value that we are actually serving real customers in a real way, um, while we are still developing the type of AI technology that will make robots fully autonomous long term. And Sudha, Do you think it'll be a good idea if I show the product video just for everyone to have a better
Yes, you
idea?
can show the product video. You can even share slides, what you did, and then open it up for Q&A. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
fine.
I think that's a good idea. So essentially, and just a comment for everyone, I will present some slides and I will present the product video first. But keep in mind, like it's not bound to this topic. The idea is that I want to have a conversation with you where you can ask me about the elements that are relevant, and I'm pretty sure I will give you a good answer to that. So
Yeah.
let me just no, product video.
I mean, we'd like to find how you arrived at the market product fit and how you're scaling. I know you're doing a lot of partnerships. Nobody tells you outside, unless you're in the inner circle of startups, how they're really scaling and what's their secret sauce. Suddenly we see that,
That
companies
is
have scaled.
absolutely correct, and I will even share some cool stories. So that that that
And anybody who's here who's local, please tell me. I could not ask the Stanford class yesterday to just say, hey, join me in person because I'm not allowed to do a field trip for my Stanford class officially. But now we are outside. If anybody is here, I can take three more people. I can take two more because Henry just signed up. But if anybody's interested, just let me know right here. Nothing formal. I'll add you to the invite.
okay,
Okay.
perfect. So here we have our product video, which describes the nature of what are we doing in broad specific. So yeah, that was the product video. It represents the latest we've got, but definitely at the same time, I would also like to show you how we got here from scratch and what's the role AI plays, but definitely how did we run the process to scale the company up to this point. So I will be sharing my screen again, um, and then to present you some slides. So to begin with, I would say that this is the vision we have where you are in a coverage area and you order something through your preferred app, and then this cute little robot shows up to you. You press a button on your cell phone and that essentially reveals the lid, which allows you to take your food. um, I'm gonna definitely talk about how did we build this company, but also in essence what's the business model and the technical concept. So when it comes to the full idea on how do we build a company like this, you gotta have a very clear objective. The objective is not building AI, the objective is not building an autonomous robot, the objective is not even disrupting technology as much as we're creating service. So I would say that the first and foremost is our pursuit for service is way beyond our pursuit for technology. That there is no way technology can be sustainable if it is not solving for a real problem. What we found is that in today's world, if you're doing delivery, the cost of an order is about 40% of the cost of the food for the restaurant, and then like almost 40% the cost of the same food if you're getting the food delivered to you. So fundamentally, as delivery is broken, it's been the same system since the 90s. We decided to create a company that will reduce the cost per delivery. Again, it's not about technology or robots. It's entirely about reducing the cost per order. So in the process from 2017 till 2021, we've have worked on the idea of building the technology that allows us to bring this cost down. 2017, when we started this company, the cost per single order was around $15. Now it sits below $3. And how did we do that? Then that's exactly what I'm about to show you. So for context, we come from Colombia. We started our first company in Bogota. We were doing deliveries for college campus students. This company sold for a subsidiary of Delivery Hero. And in Colombia, we also have this version of Shark Tank, the TV show. So we went to TV, and it was great to connect and get some money that enabled us to find support and come to the Bay Area. We are a UC Berkeley Skytech accelerated company. Um, you can see that on the ethos, like UC Berkeley got us because they knew we were hungry. They knew we really wanted to do this. And the first step in this mission was building a robot. This was the first robot we built, super scrappy, but it sends a huge message. It is that as a company, we prefer to be out in the wild, getting customer feedback instead of doing and redoing and redoing lab experiments that are not considering who the end user is going to be. The first robot was actually kind of funny. It was this target basket with a phone holder with a servo and linear actuator to open the lid, and that's pretty much it. It was tipping all the time, but it really made a case on the idea that getting small vehicles delivering burritos make a bunch more sense than running with a 3-ton car, and like creating problems on the right of way. The second step after knowing that the proof of concept was there was creating an identity. So we worked with behavioral economics professors, and we came to the conclusion that over engineering is a thing. That if you are just looking to have the robot with the most amount of sensors, the most tech, it might even defeat the objective, which is delivering burritos in a cost effective way. So we learn how expectations drive behavior, and in the way you change people's expectations, you can manipulate that behavior. And by adding a cute face and keeping the size of the robot small, we were able to nudge people and bring out this idea of the small animal instincts that creates a product that people can love. So instead of going for an ultimately over techy product, we built something cute, and that has proven to be a huge differentiator, and it has a huge depth when it comes to uh, developing a business and creating a company. So after we created an identity for the robot, and actually this identity has stayed for over 300 robots, we had to build our own navigation stack. uh, you've probably heard how the process of building technology, if you take your hardware seriously, you're building your own software, then this is kind of the reverse. We built our own WebRTC based technology to create robot navigation. We have built our own first mile and last mile solutions for fulfillment, and even created our own custom hardware. um, this is all like processes that have been super useful. Now at this point we have a cute robot that people can accept, and we know how to make it work. How will it navigate? The next part was creating a very robust set of integrations. So fundamentally, this happens through POS and essentially all these set of APIs that allow us to get connected to restaurants. At this point, since we were creating our own technology, which was not ready for commercialization, uh, we had our own app. And this was all through a B2C app that anyone within coverage area, namely at UC Berkeley, could use. We tested this technology doing dozens of thousands of deliveries uh, essentially creating an experience that went beyond campus, actually to dorms and for the city in general, with such a high population of people living in the area. And this was the magic moment where we realized we had product market fit. uh, in this case, product market fit is fundamentally having a super strong base of supporters. An entire business has classes wearing Kiwibot shirts, projecting the Kiwibot on the campanile. Halloween 2018 was a year where everyone was dressing up as a Kiwibot. Everything we did was really like well received. Our relationships with clubs were instrumental in creating a sustainable business um, idea. So I would say that after we had this product market fit and we knew that we have made it in Berkeley, that we have this point where even people graduating have a new tradition of taking pictures with robots, and that's how good the service is showing retention, virality, and all the growth hacking elements, that we're ready to move and continue to find new places where we could essentially continue to work. So we took all these lessons, we packed them in a bunch of frameworks, and we had experiences in Stanford, we had experiences in Cornell, in NYU, in Harvard, and essentially other 12 campuses where we created experiences where we learned how to launch. We came back and replicated our success at the University of Denver, first running a pilot directly with the university, and second running a pilot with the food provider that's called Sodexo. The article you see in TechCrunch is nothing else but the consolidation of a 50 campus deal where we're creating robot technologies that go beyond um, just a single campus, but rather an enterprise solution for delivery. So I'll go to the business model in a second. So what are the key takeouts out of our process? And definitely please be ready with tons of questions, because that's the benefit of this space. Is that while we created the technology, we were based on a B2C system with an app, and we learn by listening to our customers, by understanding where the necessities are at, that an app was not the best way. Actually, an API makes a ton more sense. We're working with huge players: Domino's, Sodexo, Shopify, Knight Foundation, even, and I can talk about our social work too. But the point is that when we win delivery wars, everyone will continue to have their own app. It's only that all the orders will be routed through Kiwibot, which is better use of our time, considering the huge amount of time that you spend building an app. Um, Part of, and let's have this conversation for sure, of how we're doing things different, and this began in San Jose, was becoming adopters of the Mobility Data Specification (MDS) framework, which is actually a solution to the havoc created by scooters. So we're actively sharing data with cities, and I will just leave it there so that we talk about this more in detail. And we're even expanding the uses of MDS to encompass way more than just lat longs and timestamps. We want to make a difference with the data that we can submit for cities using our technology. As I mentioned before, just to wrap this part, when it comes to the technical concept, we have created a robot that is not only able to do outdoors, but also indoors, which has been a huge difference. So at this point, we can do campuses, sidewalks, outdoors, indoors, malls, offices, and even stores. Um, the domain of autonomy, right now we're doing level 3 outdoors with our full stack that we created on our own. Yet, as I mentioned, not all cities will allow you to use this type of technology without more eyes on it. And finally, the low hanging fruit of just essentially placing a lidar on the robot and doing SLAM indoor navigation systems, by which the technology is already autonomous. And definitely, like, just to show how the idea of listening to your customers and building products based on real necessities and not just over engineering, how long this has taken us, and how many opportunities that even competitors with millions and millions of dollars have not yet been able to see on the sheer difference that we're building for real necessity, not building for technology as a means to its own end. So I hope, and I was open enough and left room for many questions. Again, that's what I think is the value of this space. So Sudha, if you have any particular question, or how would you like to move forward?
Okay. Yeah, I want to see if the class has any question. Otherwise, I have tons of question. Okay. If anybody has a question. Okay. Dan has a question. Dan, do you just want to speak up? And if you don't mind, open the, yeah, you are on camera. If it's not a hassle, if you absolutely don't want to be on camera, no pressure. Dan, do you want to speak up your question?
So yeah, my question is on behalf of a lot of us
And
non-technical
also
people.
introduce yourself, so for context where you're joining or any background you're coming from.
Oh, okay. So I'm Dan. I'm in marketing research, but I'm myself a non-technical person. So I don't code or I don't know Python. So I'm asking this question on behalf of a lot of us non-technical people who are trying to do an AI pivot. Why would a startup hire a non-technical person like one of us instead of a technical person who already knows Python and a lot of the coding and technical skills?
Yeah. So I would say that even if technology is part of the purpose of why you build a tech company, so many things in between are social processes. When you talk to cities, you need to have a certain set of skills that will allow you to comply with local regulations and even convince a city to welcome technology. When you're selling, part of the sales process, even if I'm not technical like an engineer, uh, you need the type of people that will have a relationship with engineers that is good enough to understand the product and be able to convey to others what are the advantages of the product without being too much in depth on the nitty gritty. On top of that, then you have operations. You need people with, say, a consultant mindset that will build the type of frameworks to make your operation scalable. So what I'm trying to say is that 80 or to 90% of the process of building a company is a non-technical process, even if it's a robot company, because it has so much to do with creating relationships. It has to do with convincing people. It has to do with working with regulators. It has to do with sell to customers, or even handling relationships uh, with investors. There is an old saying, and I really like this one on Silicon Valley, that startups are fundamentally foxes and hedgehogs. So you definitely want to have a solid group of hedgehogs, AI engineers that know everything about the latest neural networks and their application in GPUs. But at the same time, if you want to be successful, you definitely need generalists that will understand the basics of the product, the basics of the code, the basics of the technology in general, and apply that, and just shoot different ideas. Many times we've seen how our technical employees see logical solutions that engineers are too much in the details to see. So not only would I say that I recommend bringing non-technical people, but actually bring people with very diverse like backgrounds. We've had artists fixing robots, and that turned to be a great idea. Even having anthropologists on our administrative team has been great, because we can see a different perspectives on how the business and the market is moving. So this is important to the point that I can tell you that some of the other companies that on the robot sector that came behind were mostly MIT or companies that are really geeky, people very focused on building a robot, but then you have no idea about operations, and you have no idea about the real customer you're serving. All of this, you can save millions of dollars with the type of like the benefit of someone that is looking at the product in a more pragmatic way. So that would be my answer.
Thank you so much, David.
I had a quick question. and that was you mentioned during the initial presentation that you have a robot that people can accept. A robot that people can accept. That's kind of a loaded phrase. Talk to us about what we can accept. I'm a journalist. I see a lot of people behaving badly. That's one thing, of course. But yeah, anything you want to address in that regard?
David, I want to add one thing because I saw Yash is asking a question. I think it's related to Henry's question. Henry, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for that. Yash, do you want to speak up? Because David will be able to answer this together. You've been asking about the design. Now you're asking about ethics. Do you want to speak up? You're muted. Okay. Oh, sorry. So she's not able to speak up. Okay, I can read Yash's question. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. She's saying, while training the Kiwibot, were animals also considered an obstacle? What were the ethical consideration encountered during the pilot?
Well, training Kiwibots were animals also considered as obstacle the ethical.
So Henry's asking about what is acceptable to people, and you mentioned you have anthropologists in the team. So I thought Yash's question of how you considered ethics in the training process also would be a relevant question.
Both questions make sense, and I can connect them. So let me see 1 second. Let me just pull the different set of slides. Okay, so to Henry, to your question. So essentially, acceptance, we measure acceptance by having a similar density of scooters, for instance, that a different company provides in the same area, and just analyzing the statistical incidence of vandalism. If on a similar proportion in a similar city in similar times, we can prove that the statistical amount of vandalism is lower, then definitely there is a different factor in acceptance. Um, Other ways by which we measure this acceptance is literally by getting people in front of people and unbiased asking, like, literally, what's your first perception about this product? The logic is that the answers we got before and after we had like cute faces put on the robot definitely make a huge difference. And that's where kind of these psychological reasons kick in. Like when you're a baby, the first thing you recognize in others are the eyes. And if someone makes you cute eyes, you're more prone to accept whatever it is. If it's small and if it's like distance between shoulder to shoulder, it's kind of small, so you can control it. It also triggers your small animal instinct. So of course it is a loaded thing to say that it creates acceptance, but it's something that we can also prove, because statistically the incidence of not having incidents or the comparison between other modes is much better. So that's kind of like our perception, and definitely, and the things you see, like people behaving like little kids of all ages when they see a robot. Like there was a New York Times article written about this, and the journalist actually asked at UC Berkeley, "What have you seen people do?" And it was like 300 comments on people telling like these cute stories about human robot interactions. That's definitely something that I cannot stress enough. Um, to make this conversation interesting and give you something that you would like to see, even if it's counterintuitive, um, we had a very big problem once. Before we redesigned our robot, actually we had not one, as we do now, but 4 different LiPo batteries. If you're starting a robot company, don't use 4 different LiPo batteries where you're having a robot. That's really dangerous. And we had the experience where we even had a heat incident. So what happened was that essentially this robot burst into flames in the middle of UC Berkeley, and we thought it was done. We thought that was our end. Like literally, we're not gonna come back from this. And the reason the company didn't die was because of the reaction and the love that we have from people. So you can take a look at this article from the MIT Tech Review. It was published the day after the incident, Okay, it doesn't have pictures anymore, which I think is great. This used to have a picture of a student literally just helping the robot, um, like uh, like not be lit. But then the beautiful thing was that it was actually a student, part of the community, that not only fixed the robot and was the primarily point of attention, but how at night students had a candlelight vigil for the same robot. So it had a small tribute and it had flowers and it had like pictures. So I can tell you that if you don't have product market fit, if you don't have customers behind you willing to support and make you
Yeah.
like come back when you have an incident, you don't have a product. And products are about communities and how to engage people. So even if it's not a very politically correct example and it shows a failure that we had, definitely that's part of building a startup, bouncing quick from that. So moving to the next question.
David, I want to add something.
Yes.
Um, I used to go to the UC Berkeley area for some other music event, and I've seen Kiwibot, so I'm one of those people who chased it down. I have videos on that I've shared, and I have seen the candlelight vigil. So for me, it was, I am very big on not endorsing specific companies or brands, and I chase all kinds of self-driving things. But and I was one of those people who tried to see, okay, this is this tiny thing, does it allow me to open it? Is it supposed to deliver something? Will it scream at me? And I tried to do it, it didn't do anything. It just goes off. It's kind of docile, I would say. Like, it would pause when too many people come around, and you could see that on the road, and it really shares the road. But I saw the vigil. I actually have a picture of the candlelight vigil.
Oh, cool.
That was, and I've talked about it and written about it. I did not know the students stood up and did a vigil. I just saw the candle, and people kept coming for a few days and leaving flowers and candle. And it was amazing that, when I teach another course called AIX, which is about designing the human computer interface. So for me, it was fascinating that how people reacted, not just the company did this, right? It was not something you planned. I did not even know the article that came about. So that's very fascinating. So you said it, did you see that as a sign that you have a community? And so now, did you do something about it?
Yeah, yeah, of course, because it was more than that. Like the reason why the MIT Tech Review and Business Insider and all the others that came saw it was through the meme page. So UC Berkeley has a meme page with almost 200,000 people in it, and that community loves us. Before we had Kiwi on campus, the experience at UC Berkeley was very grim. Everyone was talking about depression, being sad, this sucks. After Kiwibot, it really changed the tone, and of course, the university picked that up to the point where even in COVID, on the darkest days of COVID, Kiwi was still like, oh yeah, be part of the Kiwi house and like just have some UC Berkeley spirit. So technology does that for you. Every campus we go, admissions becomes our best friend. Donations become our best friend, because if you can showcase that you have technology at your school, then definitely you're worth and you're valuable. So it's all part of the work in tandem. So, but I think that the other question was also very interesting, and then I actually have a good answer for that. So safety on the road. So definitely, as you saw, we had too much to learn about how to make operations safe on the right of way. And here's where the secret sauce of having people like me in your company is useful. Uh, because you need people that will read existing regulations and people that will understand the technology and will find where the middle ground is between the regulations that are in place and the technology you have and how everything blends together. So I'm going to show you an example of how did we set up operations in San Jose. Um, Now that you're going
This
to
is
Moro.
what we will see in the tour tomorrow. So we are going to see the social aspect of what you're doing with Knight
Exactly.
Foundation. Yeah.
So essentially the biggest like thing was creating a launch framework, and this launch framework is great because it set the regulations that exist in San Jose, and then LA copied the regulations in San Jose, and then Santa Monica is copying that, and then Pittsburgh copied California. So essentially this framework is, I'm proud of this because it has really led to many changes on the way we create robot like frameworks. Fundamentally, the idea, in a few words, is that when you want to start operations, the first thing you want to do is to do some feasibility. So we went with the robot and we talked with at least 60 restaurants, with at least 60 restaurants, 60 people on the street, and even owners on buildings. And we had social approval. If we go to the neighborhood and we feel like there is a really bad attitude and people do not want to have Kiwi, then we won't do it. After we learned that these people in San Jose were actually very excited to have Kiwi and they like the idea of having the robots around, then we start doing some remote mapping. We do GIS and we map sidewalk infrastructure, supply points, demand points. Altogether, we will optimize for the sidewalk infrastructure that makes sense to our technology, and we create clusters where supply and demand is good enough in 1 mile radiuses so that we can actually create a delivery service. Up next, we do Vision Zero, is the type of technology and programs cities have created to eliminate traffic deaths. The idea is that not every street has enough visibility or is safe enough for a robot to cross. So we take these supply and demand clusters that we have created and we mix that up with our Vision Zero protocols and ultimately creating what we call a robot avenue map. So we cannot, and we say this to ourselves just because we want to create long-term relationships with cities, like we're not expecting ourselves to cross every single street, but rather certain streets. Uh, Many times, even Google Maps tells you you can cross this street. You absolutely cannot cross this street. It is very dangerous. Even if you were a citizen in a wheelchair, it will be really dangerous to do the same exercise. So better not. This to say that we have the robot avenues to ensure that we're not gonna put anyone in danger. And this is how essentially we set up where do we operate. Then we have this chart with incidents, and we roll robots first, one person, one robot, doing hundreds of routes with incident levels. If we cross a threshold, we need to repeat the experiment. Then we randomize the same experiment with a bunch of robots, not one, but three, not with a human, but completely alone. And we test the integrations with real customers. We do beta deliveries that are really useful, and then we're ready to take beautiful pictures and launch. So this is an abstract of how do we launch per mile. This is in tandem and a consensus with cities. This is much better than just throwing robots and creating a bunch of problems. And just having this uh, got the city, the organizations that run this policy interested enough. Now we're having philanthropies paying Kiwibot to expand. So we're using city dollars. Imagine we're the first company that gets paid to expand. Tell this to any scooter company, and that's not something they achieved so easily. Right now, we're also in in Detroit, in Pittsburgh, and in Miami, expanding our operational framework because cities knew we're a player that will extend the hand and be easy to work with and co-create and prepare ourselves for the future of autonomous vehicles. So yeah, I think it is kind of a way of saying that building a company is a very rocky process. You have to be very nimble. You have to move fast. Everything that can happen will happen, but as you create something that is scalable and something that is respectful with your community will get your back when you need it the most. So just trying to point things that you will not hear from uh, common Silicon Valley companies.
So
Dovetailing on that, if I could, you mentioned you've gone from incubator to now to, did you say Series A funding or level 3 auxiliary? Could you explain?
Oh yeah. So those are two different topics. In terms of fundraising and the size of the company, uh, you could say that we already went through the incubation process. That's UC Berkeley. That was kind of our university for starting a company. The seed stage of a company is the stage where you're seeking product market fit. which is creating a proof of concept that is completely deployed with all the elements of the technology, uh, to the point, reaching Series A, where we're at, where we are getting to growth stage. Growth stage meaning that you will probably get investment in millions of dollars, in two digits, to expand that product market fit that you were able to prove some 5 or 10 times. After that, we go to another fundraising round with probably triple digits, where we expand that 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times, and then you actually have a company. On the levels, I was meaning levels of autonomy. That's a separate topic. Level 3 means that you have technology that has a remote operator, but there is a significant amount of autonomy going on to correct or to improve inputs made by our supervisors when we are in operation.
Can you speak about the remote operations? It's very fascinating. What I find about Kiwibot, you said we didn't focus on the technology, but you have a solid AV self-driving technology up to level 3. And then a lot of what you're doing is very data driven, all your operations is, I would say, technical, in the sense you approach business with a very logical measure and test, and you have like experimental testing for different versions of the robot on what people like, and how you approach the scaling into the city and validating each of your business assumptions is very, very ingenious, I think. So on level 3, it means that the robot can drive autonomously, but it has a remote operator. So that means you have a team behind that. So can you just talk to that?
Yeah, no, for sure. So that is something that I'm very proud of. So essentially, we take our team and we train our remote supervisors. We essentially give them like the same indications as if you were taking a driver's license in California, even if it's in Colombia. In our office in Medellin, in Colombia, we have a second floor and we designed a bad city. So we have sidewalks, we have a rain room, we have stoplights. So we have all the elements of a hard city, and our remote supervisors train in this circuit until they're ready to go out in a like very open space, and with time they reach confidence levels up to the point where we deploy them in our best campuses or best cities. Um, the point of having remote, so, and this is something that everyone in this space neglects for some reason, and when I raise this topic, it's always, it's like when you're launching operations in a city or a campus, there is also a social process of incorporating your supervisors, having them learn on the route, learn the rules of the right of way, learn even the culture. Those elements are important. So when we take on the responsibility to have our own remote supervisors, we're also ensuring that the supervisors will have a level of commitment that is unparalleled, versus other companies, even when we compare apples to apples. And then the idea is that since this labor arbitrage, there is a lot people can learn about economy, like how different economies in Colombia and why wages in one place cannot be comparable to others. But we get to the point where our remote supervisors are making more money than their own parents in the context of where we live in. And additionally, these supervisors have a root within the company where they become our developers. The first Google expert in Colombia actually started as a remote supervisor. It's definitely a way to connect more youths to STEM, and we use it as a channel also to develop talent. Um, and sorry, this is also another not so nice comment, but the cost of a recent graduate Stanford engineer is similar to half of the cost of developing technology in Colombia. So it is also a wake up call where in today's world you're not competing against people in your own city, you're competing against anyone with access to internet and access to knowledge. So definitely, I think that taking all these advantages, as a company, we're hungry. As immigrants, we are always looking for the next opportunity. Definitely, I think that elements of what I was able to talk in this quick conversation can be interesting to your own AI companies, but also to shape your perspective on how do you scale companies and what is the actual role AI takes while building an AI company, and how much is out there that actually doesn't require line of code. Like coding people is way more difficult and more important.
Yes, Sam has that's fantastic. Sam has a question. Sam, do you want to speak up? Sam is joining us from Oxford, and she's a NLP expert. In fact, she's going to be teaching our live lab course that we'll have in fall with NLP. And she has a question. Sam, just speak up.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sudha, for the work. It's fascinating to see and the interactions with the Kiwibot and individuals on campus and outside of campus. I was just wondering, in the early days when you were testing, how did you find navigation around those kind of really difficult places, on campus or at dorms? Did you find that there was a little bit of that human interaction there, and that was behavior that was learned? How did that work? And did you have supervisors to help with that and support with that?
Yeah, I mean, like as a general principle, we always have a 3 minute reaction time. Anyone can tip a robot, anything can happen. So that's always that's something that you can take for granted.
Okay.
In general, I think that an advantage is that we are not overcomplicating ourselves ever. So we use MiFi beacons and LTE for internet, and essentially the robots are equipped with this as a signal. Um, Two lessons that were really important. First is that whenever we go out, we definitely make LTE and coverage maps. Uh, you don't want to have a problem where latency has a spike when you're crossing a street that can lead to terrible problems. So our optimization for routes is actually considers the LTE and signal maps. You can imagine that in the middle of UC Berkeley, in the middle of a crowded day, there's so much people walking around that you don't want to transit the robot to that direction. The benefit of pre-planning is that you will offer an ETA, and the student will say like, okay, this is 20 minutes, why? And we'll go like, no, it's like literally there's so much people that the road will be faster, safer, and overall better if we take this different route. And they go, okay, that makes a ton of sense. And actually that's good for the university and regulators, that they love it. Right now, what we did is changing the system. Now we are using a router, and we throttle between carriers. So the idea is that we do stress testing with multiple carriers in different universities. We decide which are the top two carriers, and we throttle between SIM cards, as operations have different levels of requirements.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. That was wonderful. Yeah, great.
Cam?
Security said delivery order loaded. Closes the door. And that's it. So till here, the restaurant is done. The rest we're just going to update the UPS or something like that.
Very true. Actually, part of our work in the AI and robotics team has to create a very great data set for us, because it is not the same to have data from a car. It's a very integrated part of that. Yeah. That's a very good observation, and it's very true actually. So, what are you seeing right now is the scoping project. What's the scoping project? Well, we have a robot with lots of useful tools, including a stereo camera. This stereo camera gives us information about our surroundings, not only regarding the image, for example, not only telling us there is a person in there, but we have the possibility to get measurements from our surroundings. So for example, let's say that we have, I don't know, a hole in the street, a hole in the sidewalk. That's dangerous, that's not how it's supposed to be. So we are basically capable of telling the cities, hey, in this location, with the GPS coordinates, we have detected and we have measured this hole in the street, there is a problem, you have to be aware of it. But it is only not for them. We can use it ourselves as well. For example, we can determine, okay, we have scouted here, we have determined that this sidewalk is not going to protect conditions for performing our driving. So we have to avoid it. There are a lot of useful information that we can get from this topic. It's valuable information for us, it's valuable information for the cities, and it's a very, very, very important information for the planning of cities. Planning of cities is going to be like a tough subject in the near future, and we are going to be capable of being part of it.
So yeah, to complement what Rafael is saying is that so we're building this new data, but we're working on how detailed this data needs to be, and the city is giving us requirements to have like the right detail, and if we have photos and we understand why the sidewalks are damaged or why it's more dangerous, because the more information we gather with these detailed aspects, the better for them for future planning and for the handicapped people needs to if they want we need to provide them.
So it's very mutually beneficial.
Yes.